So this week the translation team is going to Bias, and they'll be there for 2 weeks while I participate in a translation consultant workshop here in Santani. And while they're there, they'll be teaching the same passages that the Bible study here has been going over to the community there in the village. But they'll also be drafting the final 2 passages in the book of Luke. And this is really exciting because over the last 10 years, not only have we been working as translators, but we've been training them as Bible translators. Yetfa speaking, mother tongue Bible translators. And this team has come so far from having never touched a computer, having never been involved in translation, to fully controlling the technology and the principles and processes of translation. Now, we've set these 2 passages aside as kind of their final step in that training. They'll do all the prep, all the study, and then we'll draft Luke chapter 18 verse 35 to chapter 19 verse 10. Now that's a fairly simple, straightforward narrative passage, and they'll do great. The second passage is Luke chapter 12 verse 22 to 34. Now, this is a little more difficult passage. It's what we would call a hortatory or a teaching passage. And it will give them a good opportunity to stretch their skills as Bible translators. So pray for them as they do that, and I need to finish getting the computers ready for them to take. With the team gone, I thought this was a perfect opportunity to tell you about the stages a passage goes through after it is drafted. And the first stage is the team check. Okay, so a team check is exactly what it sounds like. After a passage is drafted, one of the translation team members will listen to the recorded draft and carefully check it against the text. Now, ideally, this is a team member who was not involved in the drafting. However, occasionally everyone is involved in the drafting. What we do in that case is we'll set the draft aside for several days, and after some time has passed, one of the team members will come back and check it again. Now, if you find something that seems unclear or inaccurate, we'll revise that portion. But once the whole team is satisfied with the translation, it moves on to the next step, transcription. So during this phase, one of the team members will listen to the recording of the oral draft and type it up so that the oral draft becomes a written text. Once they're finished, I'll take the transcription and check it again against the recording. Once I'm confident that the transcription is accurate, the passage goes to the next stage, which is an exegetical check. Exegetical check, I'll compare the Yetfa translation with the original text, also looking at various other translations, translation resources, and commentaries. The main concern at this stage is accuracy and faithfulness to the original text. Once I'm satisfied with that, the passage moves on to the next phase, which is community checks. During the community check stage, we're really checking for 2 things. First, clarity. We want to know, is the translation clear? Now, it's one thing for the translation team who has spent a significant amount of time studying and discussing and internalizing the passage to say, oh yeah, it's clear. It's another thing for someone from the Yetfa community who is unfamiliar with the text to hear it and to understand it. So we take it and we ask them questions. We'll ask them to retell several different ways to see if they understand it. The other thing we want to know is it natural? We want it to sound like a natural Yetfa text. And again, we'll ask them to retell the passage and various other things to see if it's natural. Once this goes through several community checks, it goes to the next stage, which is a consultant check. During the consultant check, we'll ask a third-party translation consultant to look at our translation, ask any questions, give us any feedback he or she may have. Now, the tricky bit is that no other translation consultant knows Yetfa. So what we have to do is make a very literal translation of our translation into a language that the consultant knows. He or she will look at it, ask any questions.
They'll also get an opportunity to meet with the translation team and other members of the Yetfa community, ask questions. And once everyone is satisfied that the translation is accurate, clear, and natural, the translation will go to the final stage, which is proofreading. Once a passage has gone through all the checking and all the different stages, the final thing to do is a simple proofread. We're checking for spelling errors, punctuation, other issues, and preparing the passage for publication. The other thing that we do is we make a final recording. After all the revisions, we want to make a final recording because a great number of the Yetfa people are not yet literate. So one of the main ways that we distribute our translation is through audio recordings. Even after a careful drafting process, a passage goes through many different types of checks and often revisions before it's used in a Bible study or in preaching or even personal use. You see, it's God's word to the Yetfa people, and it's important that it be accurate and clear and natural. Well, I hope you've enjoyed getting a sneak peek behind the process that we use for translating God's word into the Yetfa people.
Okay, as always, I want to wrap up by sharing a few prayer requests. First, please pray for the translation team as they're out in Bias. They were really excited about going out there to do some ministry. Second, pray for the translation consultant workshop. It starts tomorrow. It'll be a little more than a week. It'll be a pretty heavy load. And finally, continue to pray for our visas. As always, thank you for praying. We'll see you next week.
Passage is drafted. One of the translation team members will listen to the draft and carefully check it against the text. Going to Bias. Wow. With the team going to Bias, I thought this was a perfect opportunity to tell you about motorcycle. Going to Bias, I thought this was a perfect opportunity to tell you about the stages. Stepping on the stage.
As always, I want to wrap up by sharing That's okay. We'll just start.